We are grateful to have with us today our industry experts to discuss strategies that leaders can implement to effectively guide their teams through the journey of integrating AI into the workforce. Now, let me hand over to the panel now.
Hi everyone, hello. So welcome to the session, right? So before we begin, I also want to welcome our online audiences, right? I heard that there was a really large crowd online as well, right? So we will be taking your questions as well. There's a QR code, right? And I have a tablet here, so we will do that. So let me introduce more about our panelists first, right? Before we get started. So I will start off with Sachin. Right, Sachin is a distinguished technologist with 19 years of experience, right, in delivering technology products and solutions. Right, he has established a global center of excellence for data analytics and business intelligence. Right, he's a leader in data analytics, and he has led some initiatives in financial crime and anti-money laundering, and a track record of delivering products and software solutions. Right, so Sachin currently is a adjunct senior lecturer at NUS, right? We're very happy to have him in the department. And also the Deputy Chief Data Officer at GovTech in Singapore, right? So his previous roles also include the Director of Data Privacy and Operations, right? And VP of Data Analytics and Business Intelligence at Standard Chartered Bank, right? So this is Sachin for you, yeah. So next we have Ms. Yap Aye Wee, right? She's the MD and Group Head of Learning and Transformation at OCBC Bank, right? She has over 9 years of experience in this role, right? And she's a strategic partner to businesses, driving people performance through the development of high-impact learning interventions, right? Yeah. So she also currently serves as a member of the Skills Advisory Panel, right? Providing a strategic direction and advisory to the Skills Development Partner Program. Right. So, her career at OCBC Bank is marked by very significant achievements, right, including leading training and culture transformation initiatives, right, yeah. And she has also led the transformation of the regional contact center, right, at OCBC. Right. So please welcome Aye Wee. And last but not least, right, we have Jussi, right, Professor Jussi Keppo, right, he's the head of department at our analytics and operations in NUS Business School, right? So he teaches risk management, analytics courses, directs analytics executive programs, right? And also the research director at the Institute of Operations Research and Analytics, right? So he has many publications, right? So many, I wish to be like him one day, right? Even 10% is good enough for me, right? So very top tier journals, right? Journal of Economic Theory, Review of Economic Studies, Management Science, Operations Research. I think if you just name that journal, he'll probably be there, right? Yeah. So yeah, please welcome Jussi as well. Yeah. Okay. So let's get started, right? I think ladies first. So I will direct the question to Aye Wee, right? Maybe you can first start by describing how OCBC has leveraged generative AI, right, for employee-centric use cases, right?
Okay, let's just get started. So lots. Okay, so if you're familiar with the history of OCBC, we've had a very strong data analytics team for the last probably 15 years. So with that strong foundation, when generative AI came onto the market, we were able to capitalize on it quite quickly. So if I can just maybe share very broadly our strategy of using AI, and in particular, I think generative AI is the area of interest today. So there are two streams of applications, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. One is what we call universal assistance, right? So that would be for the broad base of all our employees. So that would be things like, let's say, the example of OCBC GPT, and I think you guys have your own GPT as well, which is really for ideation and content creation. And that's available for all employees across the OCBC group. And it works very much just like ChatGPT, except that it's encased within the OCBC firewalls. Another example of a sort of a universal assistant is transcription tools, or search and search tools. So we have something called Buddy, right? And anybody who works in a large organization will know that over time, data and information gets lodged across the organization in the, in places that you've forgotten existed, okay? So what Buddy does is that it trawls the enterprise database and returns the information that you're looking for. So from an employee perspective, okay, you'll be asking questions like, oh, I'm going to be in Hong Kong. What is the per diem for Hong Kong? What is the class of travel if I'm flying to Hong Kong, etc. And it will return you that information. So these two are two, examples of what we call universal assistants. Increasingly, though, as more and more of our workforce start to understand the power of AI and generative AI in particular, our data analytics team is getting a lot of requests to say, can you work with me to develop something for my team, for my business case? So increasingly, we are building a suite of what we call role-specific assistants. So an early use case, which we launched early last year, is something that we call Wingman, which is a coding assistant. And so this Wingman is an app that our coders, so we have a couple of hundreds of them across the group, they use that as a sort of a buddy to help them finish writing their codes. So for those of us like myself who is not a coder, it's like, you go to Google and you look for, something, right? Before you even finish typing, Google has made some suggestions, okay? So that's what Wingman does for coders, right? It completes the code, right? So Wingman is one. The other use case is our contact center. So every day we get lots and lots of calls, right? And the agents are under great pressure to handle the call, serve our customers well, and then the after-call work. So what AI does in that particular case for our contact center is to, record the call, transcribe it, do a sentiment analysis, pick up keywords, right? So was that a good call? Was that an angry customer? And then also to transcribe it and derive a couple of next best actions. So this, as you can imagine, really reduces the after-work call that is required. So these are just two very simple examples of how we are approaching the development of AI. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ivy. Right, I'm really excited to hear that OCBC is implementing so many AI tools to help your employees. So I think
I need that party.
Right. Yeah, actually, NUS also has something similar to what OCBC have in terms of like searching policies, right? Querying documents, right? I don't really use it, but it's good to have, right? Yeah. But I think I want to stay on this stream of like implementing AI, right? And we want to direct this question to Sachin, right? Because I'm sure many of us here would like to have AI implemented in our organizations, right, to help us, right? And then I would like to maybe hear from Sachin, like what does he think about the key best practices for implementing AI, right? Maybe there's some data strategy, because we know data is the key thing for AI applications, right? So maybe Sachin, you can elaborate on that.
Hello, check. Okay, thank you. First of all, Dr. Tan, thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for making me sit to next so many, amazing and loaded people, right, to learn from them. Okay, so I think we always talk about AI, analytics, insight, but at the same time, I think this is a very loaded and it's a very important question what you prepared, and thanks for that. We forget about the fundamental part, which is the data, right? And we straight away jump into Gen AI, we straight away jump into return on investments in artificial intelligence, insights, but the fundamental part is the data. And how do you make sure that the fundamental is actually working for you and making sure that your fundamentals are right? So basically, data strategy is one of the most important and the best practice point of view where you actually get the fundamentals right in order to make your AI work for you. So basically, a proper defined data strategy is one of the best practices. I wish I could give you the A, B, C, D like that, the formula which is a magical recipe for AI. But unfortunately, one size fit for all doesn't work in this context, right? But what I can share with my experience, right, that you need to have a very clear defined data strategy, which you need to really define who are the data stewards, who are the data champions, what are the technical and the business rules, how the data quality looks like. Again, data quality is very subjective. What is quality for me is garbage for, for me, right? So So it's very subjective, but at the same time, clear definition of ownership, clear definition of quality, and continuous monitoring of data, golden source, where it is coming from. How do we remove duplication of data? How do we actually go into the right source of data, right? Which we can use for the use case. These are some of the best practices which we are very, very fundamentally clicking on, and we actually harp on this point very strongly. In my team, I have full dedicated squad of data management, which talks about governance, which talks about data stewards, which talks about data champions, who works with business users, and we actually define their KPIs in terms of how to make sure their data is spread across the organization in the right optimal way, in the governed way, so that the people who should be authorized to seeing the data should only see that data, right? So one of the key KPIs for them is how do they promote their data and how many use cases they have generated for the organization using their data. And again, we are also very fascinated and passionate about cross-functional metrics. For example, how some of the data assets of HR combined with finance really generates a best UI case. For example, cost of living in a person in the organization. When a person is living in an organization, you need to rehire. You need to redeploy somebody from internal or external. Again, it's a cost to the company. How do you evaluate at a certain grade what is the cost to the company? And then how much money the finance team has to chalk out from the budget in order to replace that. These are some very useful, very important use cases using AI and data insights which we are trying to solve.
Okay, thanks, Sachin. That's very informative, right? I want to just emphasize on the importance of data strategy, data governance, good quality data, because I think we all heard this phrase, garbage in, garbage out. For machine learning and artificial intelligence, it will reflect, what is in the data itself, right? Any biases or anything that's not true, it won't be able to know that. It will just reflect that, right? So then I think Sachin also mentioned something about like KPI measuring costs, right? So maybe I want to direct the question to UC now is that in terms of measurement, right? And recruitment as well, right? How do we ensure that the AI tools, right, that we use are unbiased, fair, and the metrics that we design are correctly measuring these biases or maybe debiasing these metrics? Yeah.
Okay, so there are many questions here, So let me first say, what metrics we should use. Okay, so let's think about we use AI, for instance, in hiring or annual reviews, whatnot. The only channel AI creates value is improving decision making. If we just collect data, whatnot, that doesn't, create any value. The only channel is to help you guys to make better decisions. If that does not happen, guess what? All this AI, whatnot, it's just a hype, We have to really make money, and that's the problem now. I mean, little bit problem, because everyone, all of us, NUS and all organizations, we have put so much money on these different AI tools and collecting data, etc. The only channel, let me again repeat, I'm simple guy, simple, messages like, improving the decision making through different use cases. If we don't have use cases, guess what? This is just, consumption, spending money. To be honest, I have nothing against, burning money, but, it's not negative, but, it doesn't bring that value. So who is creating the use cases? It's the business guys. Here we have two business experts, those come from, let's say, from our MBA students, whatnot. They don't come typically from computer scientists. The decisions, what we are going to improve it's a business decision. So they need to, come from business guys, okay? So therefore, business guys should lead this process. Now talking about hiring, for instance, HR, okay? So for instance, whatever metrics we are using now in hiring, we should use exactly those metrics and then show that actually when we bring AI, cost to hire or time to hire, whatever metrics we use is actually improving. If not, guys, we have to, improve. We need to bring value through these models. If that does not happen based on the metrics you use, we failed. I mean, failing is good, it's called learning, but then we have to, go to another use case or whatnot to try to create value, there. Okay, so then you ask fairness, as well. Yeah, so how do we evaluate fairness? Actually, it's simpler than you think. Again, I go to business guys, I do let's talk about, for instance, hiring. I have, multiple candidates. Okay, so then I make, hiring decisions based on AI. We look at the outcomes. Are these fair or whatnot? You can evaluate that. Okay, but let me just say, because there is a lot of, in hiring, talking about, biases and things like that. Okay, so let's say, for instance, gender bias, that, we hire, I can say this, white dudes like me, okay. If we do too much of that, okay, so, then typically we are saying, oh, it's the companies are doing the mistake. But if you really look at the data, typically this diversity problem, for instance, part of that problem is actually from the candidate side. Meaning that your candidate pool is already so screwed up, it's not balanced at all. So then it's difficult to actually make whatever you call fair, or, fair outcomes, whatnot, because if your candidate pool is already so much biased on, let's say, certain, demographics. So it's really difficult to then say, we should hire more young people, or more female, whatnot, if your candidate pool is not reflecting at all that. So it's difficult to, fix that problem, especially because now we have regulation in many countries that you cannot even identify who is female, male, based on the candidate information. So you cannot even start addressing that problem in a way that we would love to do. You could sample more, for instance, let's say female candidates and less male candidates. But you cannot do that in many countries because regulation prevents you to do that. So there is a lot of unintended consequences from regulation, this is one of them. Sorry, did I answer all the questions?
I hope so.
Okay.
Actually, can I add?
Yeah,
please.
So I totally agree with Yusi's comment. So one of the things that we're starting to, and this happens with every technology fad, right, that comes along, that in the beginning, nobody knows what it is. Then suddenly everybody knows about it. And then everybody feels that they need to have a slice of that pie. So what's happening in OCBC, and I'm sure it's happening in other organizations, we have a phenomenon called the hammer looking for a nail, right? So every boss says, hey, I got to have a generative AI thing, right? So they call the data analytics guy, okay, so it resonates, right? And he says, can you use Gen AI for this? Okay, so I think one of the things that we need to guard against is this phenomenon, right? And it burns a lot of resources and energy. It's not we were just discussing before this panel that sometimes pen and paper is all that's needed to do the job. And if it's all that's needed to do the job, then just use pen and paper. So I totally resonate with what he has mentioned. And the other thing about biases is, I think our philosophy is that generative AI and AI is nothing but a tool, and we are masters of the tool. So how we use it, the policies that we put in place, or the new policies that we have to establish in order to guard against certain things that this technology might be kind of predisposing us towards, is something we have to be very mindful of. And sometimes the technology can be used to guard against that. So one great use case of that is specifically against gender and some of the other perhaps biases that we are now becoming more aware of, is to look at skills, right? And I'm talking to the right audience, right? This is NUS, right? So this whole skills first concept, I hold very dear to me, because skills first is different from skills based. We have always been skills-based, but to me, skills first means first before gender, first before age, first before nationality. And so what we are trying to do, and we've started, together with IBF, to look at what skills are required for any job that needs to be done. And we are actually using an AI tool, an AI-powered tool, to help us scale that across the organization, so that in time, what we're hoping to create is a culture that is blind to your gender, your age, your tenure, and your qualifications. And that is, to me, a way of leveraging the technology that supports where we hope to be in the future.
Oh, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
OCBC is fantastic bank. Thank you.
You want to kind of work
Yeah,
for us?
yeah, of course. So anyway, let me just say one thing. So you read in the news, okay, AI is biased, this and that, okay. Why is AI models biased many times? Very simple reason, because we are using historical data to forecast the future. If the historical data, which was generated by people like us, is biased, then your forecast will be biased as well. So it's because we are biased. We have made decisions that are biased, so then the AI is copying those, okay? Now you can test these things. Like I said, you can evaluate these models very easily. You have certain cases. You look at the hiring decisions, for instance. Are they biased or not? I'm asking you. Okay, if you say this is biased, you can label that data and put it back in your training and then retrain your model. And guess what? This takes, okay, let's say 1 week to retrain your models to be less biased. Try to do the same for my head, humans. It takes much longer than 1 week to remove whatever is in my head and your head, the biases. So only where I have seen infinity is the stupidity of human mind. Applies to me, you, and it's difficult to change our biases. So, but with the AI models, very easy, if you identify those. So controlling models is so much easier than humans. Okay, thank you.
Okay, glad my boss is still human. Since we're talking about use cases of AI, right, and how to identify biases and so on, I think there are some questions here. I think one is from Sachin, right? Maybe you can share some public sector uses of AI or Gen AI, right? Perhaps in the area of HR as well. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have any.
Yeah, so there are multiple use cases, right? And again, I'll come back to the hiring process, right? And which is one of the classical example, because at the end of the day, organizations goes with a lot of number of your CVs, biodatas, and all those things, So I think one of the things which I totally resonate with both the panelists is that AI making lives better for us, helping us to make better decisions, right? So one of the things which we are very kind of focused is that the repetitive work and the user experience of the HR people, like our recruiters who are actually doing a mandate kind of job, right? Like every day opening up the PDF files, going through the same, like similar kind of format CVs and for one job description or for one job, right? And so we are actually trying to use generative AI for summarizing the CV, picking up the keywords, picking up the experience, and helping them not to read 2 or 3 pages rather than reading a summarized paragraph, which makes things much, much more easy and much, much more relative, right? And at the same time, I also want to touch on the topic of bias, which I think both the panelists have spoken a lot about. One thing is about how to reduce the bias, but from a technical implementation perspective and model training perspective, we have also seen with the use of synthetic data, we can actually train the model and we can actually reduce the number of bias. You just mentioned about historical data, using about historical data. Definitely historical data is based on whatever businesses we are operating in, but the synthetic data can generate different scenarios, different multiple combinations, which your historical data is lacking. So the model will be more and more exposed to different set of data. And at the same time, for fairness and transparency, it is very important to actually publish the data sets what you are using in order to train, right? And for especially in the cases of HR, you should be focused, or you should be actually thinking about parallel run approach, where you actually run your model side by side humans, that how humans are behaving, how humans are making decisions versus how the model output is, and then you compare that how close is it? Is it 70% close, 60%? How can I go from 70 to 75 or from 75 to 80%? So these are the few things from implementation and considering how to remove the biases from the model.
Okay. Yeah, so okay, maybe I'll take the next question to Ivy, right? On the how does OCBC approach reskilling and upskilling? What's your philosophy on this, and where does AI come into this?
Well, I'm the head of learning, so I will champion and advocate learning, upskilling, and reskilling. And I'm guessing that people who came to this panel will be wondering, because it's got HR on the title, is like, is my job at risk? I mean, I get asked that question a lot of time. The answer is no lah, right? It's just like any other technology, and there's been so many examples of technology starting from, the early 1900s. And we've always had a job, but the condition is that we must continually upskill and reskill ourselves. I think that is a condition. The truth is that we are facing a huge talent shortage. So to continually upskill the workforce is a no-brainer, right? The only question is, how do we incentivize and motivate people to continually learn? I mean, one generation ago, you're done with, if you graduated from NUS, you never come back again, right? You're like, okay, so now I'm got my second phase of life and I don't have to come back to school. But the truth is we now have to keep coming back to school. So in my experience, there are a couple of things that the workforce, the emotions in the workforce, I think there is anxiety. I just don't understand what this is, right? And I think for those of us with young kids, you feel that very often as a parent, right? I mean, your kid learns in 5 minutes something that you can't learn over an entire weekend. So you feel really lousy about yourself. So in a typical workforce, you have that segment of people to work with. So how do you develop programs? How do you have an HR philosophy and an approach that is kind, right? And is empathetic of these very, very real concerns. I think that's one thing that's extremely important, because that fear and anxiety can be paralyzing and it serves nobody any good. So that's one of our key philosophies. We work very hard to ensure that first of all, we define critical core skills. And to that end, I think we're very lucky to be in a country that you go on to SSG, you know what the critical core skills are. In fact, I think we may have too many, right? And so then the question is, if you have a baby boomer who is like, let's say 55 or 60 years old, what kind of learning experience, what sort of approach would work best to impart the critical core skills versus a Gen Z? Those experiences are extremely different. So it is incumbent upon HR to have that nuanced understanding of the workforce, the emotions that run rampant and may not be very visible if you're just casually looking across the workforce, and then to genuinely work across the entire workforce to slowly upskill people. One of the things that we experimented with recently is something we call gigs, okay? It's not the Grab workers kind of gigs. It's learning in the flow of work, which in the learning space has been talked about for a long time. So we piloted it out, and in the last month, we've got some really good early successes. So we work with departments, and we say, hey, would you like to do a gig? What's your business? So I had people in the marketing division who said, well, we write articles about what's happening in OCBC. So we say, okay, could you do a gig? And I said, okay, I suppose I could do that. I could host maybe 5 people. I can teach them about journalistic standards. I'll teach them how to tell a good story. I'll teach them how to interview their own fellow colleagues, and then how to actually write an article. And one thing we realized, it reached out to a very different segment of employees. The ones who wouldn't come to class and sit through 5 days, they want to go for the gigs. So that's an example of constant experimentation in order to reach out to more and more segments of our population. So gigs works for certain kinds of people, classroom, webinars for other kinds of people. So that's really our philosophy. Specifically for AI, we work across the group. Everybody needs to know AI, that's foundational. For practitioners, so I mentioned some use cases. For the coders, I will use Wingman in my practitioner classes to say, this is your co-pilot. I'm going to run workshops for you to learn how to use the tool. For leaders, it's a whole other ball game. So my C-suites, okay, very hard to bring them for a 5-day workshop. So I will, bring the lectures to them. I keep it short and sweet. But I think for leaders, it's also very important for them to understand the strategic importance and not to be caught up in the hubris of the technology. So these are our 3 key segments with regards to AI. They're very different, and our learning experiences that we develop are also very different.
Very cool. Like I'm hearing basically Ivy is describing is customer segmentation, right? At the C-suite level and the different levels of their workforce as well, and then how you manage their different learning, preferences and so on, right? Exactly. So actually, there's one question here that I can also answer. There's a question here on any tips or available resources for HR practitioners who are taking baby steps in this journey of AI, right? And this is related to learning, right? I would like to plug our new course. UC and I are launching a new executive education in AI in HR as well. So that could be one way to kickstart your journey into AI in HR, right? Yeah. So I think in order to get people to learn, right? Incentives matter, right? We need to incentivize them to take that step, right? If not, what's it in for me, right? So maybe I want to direct this question to UC. Maybe can we, how do we, design effective incentive programs for employees, right? And again, can we use AI to do this, right?
Okay, so this is really, really interesting. So we are working with many organizations, to help actually, these are C-level, so this is a little bit unfair in that sense, to design compensation and other incentives that, the interests are in line with the organization and the C-level guys, okay? Anyhow, so AI, what can AI do in this domain? I mean, optimizing these kind of incentives is, of course, people are different. So like, it used to be like, we have, for instance, compensation, it's a little bit, everyone is getting, we have a table and, we just copy paste from there and implement, et cetera, but people are different. So now, and then we need to understand, whatever compensation, like let's keep it now simple, for instance, you have, for instance, how aggressive is the compensation? How big is the bonus component versus the fixed, pay, for instance. Okay, when you design these things, it's not only giving incentives, to, for instance, sales guys to, work more and sell more, but it also like, if you have really aggressive in compensation, strategy, so then it actually screens out, meaning like, what kind of sales guys you are getting is like, that they will be certain type because they prefer to have this kind of aggressive, compensation, for instance. So there is this like, it's not only that, that I design for the current employees, it's also for the future employees, because when you do that, it will influence how you are able to hire certain, type of individuals. Okay, so, but then, we cannot separate, only money metric, because, incentives are much broader than that. It's the whole, like, upskilling, promotions, and etc. We cannot separate these things, because, for instance, I hope, for instance, our fresh graduates, when they select their first, company, I hope, I hope so, fingers crossed, that they are, putting more weight on that I will learn new stuff in that company. Not necessarily that, oh, I make, immediately tons of money. In early, stages of your career, learning should be overweighted versus everything else. And some organizations are better in that, part of your career. And then, later you probably can make more money going to, OCBC. Okay. And there is learning as well, so it might be that you stay there, 30 years. But anyway, so I'm saying that we cannot separate these things, money and, promotions and, learning components. They are all together, and different individuals are responding differently on these different, components. And AI can help in identifying these things. Okay?
Is that anyone want to add to that? No? Okay, so actually what I hear also is this is your compensation incentive scheme or your learning components, right? They kind of have like a selection bias here, right? That they select certain types of people and whatnot, right? And okay, so I actually have a question here that's related to skills, but I think I can open it to all three of you. Is the question is like, and there's a lot of people are really interested in this question. So, a skills first HR strategy is most desirable. How can AI be used to assess or measure the depth of skills, right? Rather than just merely a checklist of skills, that the candidate possess, right? So, yeah, I think any one of you can answer.
Okay, let me, the one who goes first usually has the easiest, right? Then the rest got nothing very much to say, so. No, I'm just kidding. When you talk about depth, I assume you're talking about proficiency. Now, I think that one is a hard thing to crack, right? I asked all consultants and they're like, but let me show you something else. I said, I want to talk about proficiency. So I think proficiency is something that's really hard to ascertain right now. So in the space of workforce and assessing a person's skills portfolio, right, there is something called inferred proficiency. So really what it means is what any hiring manager does anyway, right? So you get a CV and then you say, well, this person has been doing sales for the last 20 years. I'm going to assume that he has more than a foundational proficiency. Okay. The other thing is that you infer based on, let's say, awards, sales targets, things like this, which is essentially what inferred proficiency means. So the truth is that there is no simple way right now, but maybe I should check my phone because the technology is moving so fast that maybe as I speak, there's some new thing that just got born. But as far as I know, no magic bullet right now, okay? So the way we approach skill first is not to say that it's going to replace human judgment, okay? So what is the use case for having an AI-powered skills marketplace for OCBC? Because, okay, so where we come from is that it enables scale. So we have 30,000 employees across the group. Any single manager at any one point, even if you know your team very well, you only know, let's say, 50 people at the most. So you only know the skills of these 50 people. You know their predispositions, you know what they should be able to do well if you want to transition them. With AI comes scale, or with technology comes scale. What we are able to do if we scale this skills-based or skills-first career marketplace or a skills engine is it allows managers to have a view across the 30,000 employees and say, if I'm looking for someone with a sort of foundational project management skills or change management skills, is that I can immediately give you a pipeline. And that is really what's missing right now. You still have to interview them. You still have to, have the coffee chat and say, do I really like you? Do I feel you have the, the qualities, the X factor? It doesn't take that away, but it's already better than what is currently available. So that's the way we approach it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sachin, do you have anything to add? You look like deep in thought.
No. I'm just trying to say if I'm put on spot, what I'm going to say, because she has spoken everything perfectly, right? No, I think I totally agree. But I think one thing which I really wanted to just highlight, maybe not very much related, but at the same time, we also measure the effectiveness of the the programs which we are running in order to upgrade the skills, right? So basically, what exactly we do, and we use AI for this also, like for example, if people have gone for data science program or specific kind of data engineering, maybe with, for example, with Databricks or for any kind of AWS or product and all those things, right? Once they have completed their program or the certifications, right? Then we actually also try to understand what was their performance in terms of delivering the projects. Were their performance ratings in the organization has improved? And if it is improved, by what? And but why, by what quantum kind of thing, right? It also actually gives us the ability to measure the success of the program and whether that program should be recommended to further to others. We have also gone one step further, right? We have actually also kind of, look at engagement meter or happiness meter for the people. For example, if a program is offered on Tuesday as compared to Monday, whether I will get more participation, or if I launch this program on Friday, people tend to actually miss that because they are already in the weekend mode, right? All those kind of, also gives an opportunity for us to really design our programs and the training programs that, okay, for what audience, in what time category, what kind of duration, all this thing to make sure that it is effective. I'm not sure it is related, but this is something which I wanted to bring the perspective on this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Right. Okay, so I think we have also heard from our panelists, right, many different HR applications, AI applications, right? So I was wondering, are there any major change management challenges, right, when you are rolling out, these programs at the different organizations that you work with? I mean, Sachin, you will have a lot to say on this because you're from GovTech.
No, I'm sure both them, but yeah, I was smiling more. Maybe that's why you felt that I have more to say. But yeah, based on my experience in global banks, right, and this is my first government job as well, right? I think any change is always challenging, right? It's our human nature, right? Any change is not welcomed at the first, right? So basically, so far rolling out anything, right? As you pointed out, right? Oh, will my job will be taken, or what will happen to me, right? And again, AI is here to support, to complement, right? It's not to take away our jobs, right? There might be some displacements in jobs, right? But at the same time, some of the, I would say, not so sexy work will be taken away by AI, and you will be actually free to do some strategic work. That's a good news, right? And that's a positive thinking we should always have for AI, right? So rolling out a change management is always a challenging, because you are dealing with humans, and you are actually, it is also emotional kind of roller coaster ride. So the way it has worked mostly for the initiatives what we have done at the organization at a multi-large scale is that we actually try to do in small scales and try to actually get quick wins and try to get the support of the people and demonstrate the success metrics and the success stories. Tell the stories to the people who are still to be adopting this whole thing. So fundamental change, I think, is go step by step, baby steps, but at the same time, once you have that kind of support and acknowledgement and that trust factor, then you can actually scale across very easily.
Yeah, actually, just to add to that on how we manage change, it has to be a step-by-step process, but it's also about how you signal to your workforce. So one of the things that we did is in the group data office, right? So those are the data geeks, okay? So in their hiring process, they made a very small adjustment. The hiring process required a kind of a screening test that is set up in such a way that you could not pass that test if you didn't use AI, if you didn't use an AI tool. So that already does two things. First, it only onboards people. It passes people who, if they're not pro AI, you won't get through the door. And the second thing is that you share the story, and it tells people that it's okay. We want people who are very comfortable to use AI, and it's not cheating. It's not cheating to use AI. It's expected, right? So I think it's an off-quoted phrase that it's not AI against people, it's people with AI versus people without AI. So it's the signal that's sent from the organization is paramount. And I think it starts with the leader. So if the leader has absolutely no understanding of AI and thinks that it is cheating or something like this, or how come you ask ChatGPT to do this, then I think it sends the wrong signal. So, which is why the education and awareness and the so-called brainwashing, if you will, at the top is absolutely essential.
Thank you for saying that. I'm saying to my students all the time, if you don't use these tools, no one is going to hire you tomorrow. Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah, in fact, in the education space, ChatGPT is I don't know if it's a problem or a good thing, but I force myself to use it too. I force myself to, in order to get my students to do it, I tell them that you can use it in your exams, right? In your final class tests, right? Then it forces me to design questions that know that my students are, have capability, access to it, rather than banning the use of it, because, the future is here, right? Right? I should change with the times rather than impose limits on my students, right? Yeah. So I think we are dealing with people, right? And people have this herd mentality thing. So I know that UC has done research on herding and herd mentality, right? So I would like to ask UC, like, how can his research, right, insights from his research on herding, right, be applied to enhance strategies, HR strategies, for example? Yeah.
Okay, related to AI, I guess you mean. Okay, so if we use AI models, so we, because the training data is typically, for instance, hiring decisions are based on now historical hiring decisions. So it's very, very important to get humans, to really give new data. Because, if we just show what AI would do to decision makers, many times for them it's easy to opt out in the sense that I just follow what AI is doing. Okay? So therefore it's very important to design these models that I'm not giving always you the AI, suggestion first. I will ask you to really do the decision, because that's very important. Then I will get new data that I will use training my, the AI model, so then I can do better decisions in the future. So it's very, very important in your whatever business processes you have that, we don't all the time just rely on AI models, because then we have only one data point, meaning what the AI would do. I need you guys, because you are giving the new data, and exactly what we have discussed in this AI environment, data is the first order of business. The better data you have, better decisions we are doing in the future. So you have to have processes that you don't only rely on AI model. You don't have that risk. So otherwise you have this kind of herding mentality. But it also this kind of herding, behavior, it's everywhere. You don't have to go to AI. Think about your whatever business meetings, think about here in academia, we have, faculty meetings. If senior guys, old guys like me are saying first our opinions, okay, so will the junior guys really say openly what they think, saying that old dude, he's wrong again, that this is better what we should do? Most likely not. So it's very, very important in there as well. We have business processes that let the junior guys speak first. So because they are, many times they know better and they are the future. We need to listen them. So then you have also their processes that you don't rely AI, and now the AI is really bad. It's old guys like me. So we have to have, protect that we are really collecting, data from the whole crowd, not just, one. Did that? Okay.
Okay. So I think we have only 5 minutes left, and I know there's a hard stop at 2:30 will be cut away. So maybe it's time. Let me pose a last question to the three panelists, right? Perhaps if you guys have one message, right, for everyone who came here today, maybe one sentence, right? What is that message that you would like the audience to take away today? Right. And maybe we can give them some time to think about this because it's like a surprise question for them. Right?
No, I can admit, because this is what I said. I already answered your question. Please use these tools. What do I mean? AI. Who is going to? When we use these, models, the most important thing is the use cases. Where does the use cases come from? Business guys like you. Okay. So whose value is going up? Your value is going up. It's not the data scientist like me, because I'm scaling your use case, your ideas. Your value is going 10x if you opt in and start using these tools. It's not anymore, you are disrupting many domains. It's not anymore that data scientists, computer scientists are disrupting. No, you disrupt many businesses when you use these tools. Sorry, it was not one sentence. Okay, sorry, I'm jet lagged. I just came from US, so I cannot even count sentences, please.
Yeah.
Okay. I think AI, and in particular generative AI, is the flavor of the year. But it's not going to be the last one. Next year, 2 years from now, is going to be something else. So I think what we need to always have at the top of mind is be optimistic and look at it as the glass half full, not half empty. I think in situations like this, when it is an unknown, it is very easy for us to be anxious and tip into the glass half empty. So I would advocate, if I were to encourage everyone, is to see the possibilities for yourselves and for the people around you. It is a tool that can be used for good, even though it can be used for evil too. But as we have shared so many times in this panel, we are the master of the tool. And so it really depends on us. So I in one word, is remain optimistic. Yeah.
That was challenging because there are so many things I want to say. But yeah, I think for me, it will always be people for AI, AI not for people, right? So that is my one-liner. But whenever in your area, business areas, HR or whatever area, I think before starting AI or even before thinking about AI, always think data as first, because that's the fundamental which I wanted to connect back what I started with, that data is the fundamental thing, and if you don't have that fundamental sorted, I don't think so you should go for a path of AI. It's just like you're trying to build a Ferrari where you don't even have a road to run, simple Toyota car, right? So that's my take on that.
Okay, thank you. So I think we are just nice on the dot, 1 minute left, right? So please join me in thanking our 3 panelists for their really insightful answers today.